Hello everyone, today we're taking a look at a new endeavor that has brought us two new whoops. You probably saw them in the thumbnail, but they are pickled whoops. So we have the pickle freestyle and we have the pickle race, and as you might guess, the race is kind of what you would say is lighter version, and the freestyle is the more robust version. So it's built a little differently. It's going to weigh a little bit more, and this, by what I say endeavor, it is really by two people who are heavily involved in the FPV community, have decided to come together in a partnership of some manner to bring us these quads and maybe other products in the future. I should call them 65mm whoops, I guess, not just quads themselves. But they have one factor that is a kind of a differentiator. Their differentiator we'll get to in just a moment. I'm going to take us directly to the website. But my take on this is you have, as I said, two people involved in the community. They may have others working in the background, but I know of two, and they're heavily involved specifically in the micro community. And they have developed these quads based upon their own preference, their own tunes, and then they have that one other aspect of this that we'll cover now. I wanted to go directly to the website on this, what I think is the difference between pretty much anything else you're going to find in the market, and I'm including other categories of quads or drones as well. But if we take a closer look, we have personalized setup where they'll add your rates, your bind phrase, modes, your OSD preferences, to where it is really just about charging your batteries, plugging it in, and off you go. They're also offering customer service, which is, if you've dealt with customer service within drones, this may really speak to you. But they, of course, tout it as best in class, direct customer support via the GameHat aerial Discord, community email, or Facebook. 7 days in-flight total warranty. There's some limitations, of course, on those sorts of things. No expiration, free labor on one mail-in repair, which that's something that we've never seen before, or a retune. If you need that, maybe you want something that has a little bit of a tune preference that leans one way or another. And then you also get a coupon and lifetime exclusives on the first batch. Speaking of first batch, I will have a discount code down in the video description. It is all caps, NICKBURNS all together, and that will get you $20 off your pickled whoop of choice. So to me, that is the biggest differentiator outside of people who are really flying these things. They're not just trying to make a product to sell a product. They actually fly these products and they take them to races. I'm sure they fly them casually. So we have GameHat Aerial as well as Pickle Rick FPV. Pickle Rick, it might be another name that you're familiar with. I understand that a lot of racers specifically will use his tunes in races. Matter of fact, there was a race event recently, WCT, that a pickled whoop won that race. So that's something they can put in their hat. It's also worth noting that the components could change. Of course, something new comes to market and they feel it performs better, they could change these components. As you can see in my two quads, we have two different all-in-one flight controllers. They believe they're both from Beta FPV. We've got the 4-in-1, and then we've got the 3-in-1. I believe the camera is the CO2 from Beta FPV. They use my preferred antenna, ORT. Full disclosure on this one, I had some video issues, so I replaced the antenna, and because they're using an antenna that I like myself, I was able to replace it on my own. And another thing to note about this is that I will be sending the freestyle one back to GameHat Aerial, and I think they are going to do a giveaway or an auction, or they're going to have some sort of promotional thing with that. So if you see a quad just like this available somewhere on the internet, it wasn't stolen from me. It was sent back for good purpose. I will go into the motors a little bit here because I think so KV at the very least will stay about the same. We have some 0802 27,000 kV motors from Tiny Whoop. And also from Tiny Whoop, we've got some 0702 32,000 kV T-Dog motors. On the race version, it comes in at 15.35 grams. I did use these batteries to fly the quads around. They're 1S flat packs with the BT20 connector, and they are all pretty fresh. They all have some cycles, but not a ton. Obviously, we bleed FPV.com. The boom sticks come from aerialoutlaws.com, and we have the Beta FPV Lava 300s that come from Beta FPV. Weigh this one, the Beta FPV Lava comes in at 23.39 grams. The Freestyle Edition comes in at 19.55 grams. This one I'm going to weigh with the Boomstick from Aerial Outlaws at 27.89 grams. They come with this little accessory pack, which you have some extra C-clips for your motors if you happen to lose one of those. We also have some mounts, which I believe these are used to change the flight controller from an underneath mount to an over-the-top mount. And we have the same pack in here, but we have the USB adapter or dongle that we do need for these particular all-in-one flight controllers. With the quad, you also get a 3D printed case that screws together. With the case, you can obviously put your 65mm whoop inside with a couple of batteries, and you have some spare room here, so where you can put some repair items, maybe some extra props or something like that. And the case is used with permission. P-Mantix is the original designer, and they have a QR code that comes on some material you get with the quad, so you can pull up the STL file for yourself, or you can scan it here on the screen, I guess, if you want to. And in my case, I got 2 Tiny Whoop stickers. We're going to start off with the race, as you can see there in the OSD, PKL race, top and center. I do think I could use just a touch more camera angle, and that's something I got to call out, because I call it out whenever we don't see it, is there is no adjustable camera angle. But I wouldn't be surprised, and this is probably where I lack as a professional reviewer, that you might be able to say, hey, you know, I need 18 degrees on my camera angle, because the mounts for the whoops, the pickled whoops, are printed. So I would presume, but don't quote me on that you can get a custom camera angle. This is really about a lot of customization. As I showed you there on the website, the ability to get a quad that has your rates and your bind phrase and your OSD preferences, your mode set up the way you like with the switches that you like to have them to. Those are all options, so I presume a potential custom camera angle is an option. It may take an extra day to get things together. I do want to call out my fellow reviewers out there. I do think we're going to see several that are specifically micro-centric that will also be reviewing this. So, I'm flying the race. You might be able to find the race and the freestyle from other YouTube channels like Infinity Loops or Ciotti FPV. So if you're interested in additional perspectives, you may find they have videos on these quads as well as other channels that I'm just not thinking of here in the moment. You can see I'm flying race band 8, which is pretty typical for me, and I am flying at the maximum output so that we can see the image as clearly as possible. I do get some questions still from time to time about my video reception, and I have a video linked down in the video description which talks about how I set things up and why I sit where I sit, the construction of our home, things of that nature. But do note that that one is based upon the original Goggles 1 with rapid fire module, whereas I'm now flying the Goggles 2 that has an internal analog module. So while a lot of that video is still relevant, it's not exact because I've switched goggles over to the newer version, which I am really enjoying. Just the new Goggles 2 are just a great iteration, I think. I'm very biased because I do fly a lot of analog still, and having that analog module built in, I shouldn't say too much. I've got a video on the Goggles 2. You can, I'll link it down in the video description as well as in the top right-hand corner of the screen. And you can watch that video if you would like, because otherwise I'll get sidetracked talking about the goggles too much. As far as the tune goes, I am not really sensitive to having a specific sort of flight feel. What I am looking for is something that I can fly that tracks well. You may also say that just feels right. There's a lot of feel to tune, or at least in those finer degrees of tune, of feel. Does it feel right to the person who's controlling it with the sticks? In this particular case, I think that they do have a really good tune. I do think that you might also not see it that way. It's potentially that way because, I see tunes as having a personal preference. Like maybe you want some more feed forward or something of that nature. There are some variables within the tune that can make it good for one person and make it not as good for another person. One of the things that surprised me about this little guy, this little race coming in at 15 grams dry, boy, it flies forever. Again, these are on pretty fresh batteries, but look at that. We're over 3.5 minutes of flight, and I'm at 340, 341, 342 on the battery voltage. So when I come back to the table and I disarm, it's going to recover. That was something that really surprised me. And I did a couple little things within the race flights that kind of remind myself as well as anyone else, just because something's called a race version doesn't mean you can't freestyle it. And I'm using air quotes there. And just like with something that's a freestyle, doesn't mean you can't race it. You know, if you're racing competitively, you'll be better off with a lower weight whoop, but it doesn't mean you can't casually have a race style, which I definitely lean a race style. There, the flight has ended at over 4 minutes, and our battery is recovering so close to 3.5 volts per cell. Let's go outside with the race. I picked this day not because it was the best day for the visuals. It's a little bit overcast, a little bit cloudy. But with this quad, again, 15.3 grams dry without the battery, I was really surprised at how it handled wind. The wind in this particular case is 13 to 21 miles an hour. That's the National Weather Service measurement. That doesn't mean that it's facing all of that wind, because I am in town and we are, you know, somewhat protected. I talk about this all the time, and I hate to bore everybody, but for my purposes, I thought this was really tracking well on the low weight and countering the wind side of things. It's 92 degrees. Oh, sorry, nope, I read that wrong. 91 degrees. Again, a few of my typical sorts of moves that you might call freestyle adjacent or freestyle-ish. My style definitely leans a little bit more racing, as I oftentimes say pod racing, which I don't think that is even movie accurate. I think they're speed racers or speeders that do the racing through the forest. That was the original thing that kind of grabbed me when I first got started some 9.5 years ago or something like that. Was that harkens back, especially that fence run that I make, that harkens back to those speed racers or their speeders that have that sort of pod racing sort of style. But you could definitely do sorts of things, whether it's split S's or flips or rolls or dives or power loops or other sorts of maneuvers. It all comes down to your own skill set. So obviously with these quads, these are some of my favorites, my bias. I used to have a stronger bias for 75 millimeter, but our 65 millimeters have just gotten so much better over the last couple years that while there's still a difference, yeah, if you fly outside primarily, I would recommend a 75 millimeter, just because they'll fly longer, they'll have a little bit more authority, and you'll be able to enjoy them in more winds. 65 millimeter has really come a long ways in the last few years, and I think, you know, not only this flight but the other flights that we'll see going forward in this video, you can really tell that not only is the tune helping us with the tracking and the wind, that if you fly outside, you can have speed, you can have freestyle sorts of flight, all sorts of different openings for you, whether you like to shoot gaps or maybe you like to go a little slower and do really close within proximity, or maybe you like to do tricks with gaps as well. There's all sorts of options when it comes to these little tiny quads like this, and that's why they're one of my favorites. You know, of course, one of the things that I do before I go to bed every day, if I'm not sick, or, well, I guess when I'm on vacation I don't necessarily do it, is to fly at least 2 batteries, just kind of casually down here in the basement before I go to bed. Some people play solitaire, some people might have a drink, maybe you watch your favorite show. Me, right before I go to bed, I take about 10 minutes and I fly 2 batteries, maybe even more, depending upon how tired I might be. And you can see from this flight that it wasn't necessarily a clean flight, but again, I really wanted to show you this because of the wind factor, because it really was one of those things that surprised me, that the wind was coming in from 13 to 21 miles an hour potentially, and we're going to get still good long flight time with doing all those punches. Again, 300 milliamp a battery on a 65 millimeter quad. Dry comes in at 15 grams, running around like I am, doing the different sort of maneuvers, and we're still going to get over 3.5 minutes of flight, which, in my opinion, is some of the best flight time I've seen on this size of quad. Okay, flight finally ended there. I didn't get the battery quite where I wanted to, so I would have to shave off about 9. Let's just call it 3 minutes and 30 seconds on the flight time. Now we're back inside, and we're on the freestyle. Again, you can see that in the top center in the OSD, and I've got my throttle position. It's something else that might be of interest to all of you. If you haven't noticed, it's in the top left-hand corner. I think that a lot of people who fly don't put their OSD like I do. I put my OSD like that so you can see as much of the image, the FPV image in front of you, But if you want to look to see about the other sorts of OSD elements that I do have on screen, they're kind of out of our way. Battery voltage in one corner, flight time, flight mode in another corner, throttle position in one corner, power and link quality, or VTX power and link quality in the other corner. I kind of spread those things out. For me, it's just been something I've been doing so long that when I get a quad that has the OSD elements that are a little bit out of place, it just feels off to me. So I have to move them back to those positions, which in this particular case, if you have positions like mine and you are wanting a pickled whoop, you have the option of just asking for them to move it around for you. So again, it's ready to go when you get it. With the freestyle version specifically, I think you probably might want to really investigate the channels like Infinity Loops or Ciotti FPV on the freestyle one. I think that both of those channels are lean more freestyle. You'll definitely see probably more fancy tricks. You might see something that just blows your mind too. I don't lean towards the creative side of freestyle and tricks. I've tried to work in a few with both of these quads inside that I don't normally do, but it doesn't necessarily show the full freestyle capabilities of the quad itself. I think other channels would probably do that a little bit better than I do. As I said a few times already in this video, I do heavily lean towards the racing style. Full disclosure, when we had some video problems with my initial freestyle, they sent a secondary one, which I was flying around and it was just fine. But one of the things that we were working on, and I think it was eye-opening for them a little bit, was outside and doing dives. I was experiencing some yaw washout. So even after I got the video issue resolved with the replacement antenna, and they sent me a second one to take a look at, that one did not have the yaw washout. Specifically outside when you're doing bigger sorts of dives. On the freestyle one, I did not experience it on the race style whoop, but eventually I found that, and I don't know if this happened somewhere during my series of flights or if it was always that way, there was no PID tune on it. And so I let them know, I was like, no, there's no PID tune. And so I went back outside to do more testing. And then I think it was like the third battery on that particular day, the all-in-one flight controller just stopped, and that it wasn't a crash. You know, I'd crashed it before, but that particular flight, there was no crash. I was actually doing the figure eights around the two posts in the cabana that I typically do, and the video just cut out. And then when I tried to power it back up, it was not going to do that, and there was no USB connection, so the board did fail. That might be a case that is covered by their warranty. I don't want to speak for them on that though, but I wanted to make sure that I disclosed that, and I think it was eye-opening for them to work on a yaw washout a little bit with me. Flight ended 3 minutes and 11 seconds and 354 on the battery voltage. Going outside. All right, we're outside. You can tell it's a sunny day this time around, and my specifications as far as the weather goes: low wind in this particular case, 7 to 10 miles an hour. I don't have any notes on the 10 mile an hour and being able to feel those gusts come up on my skin or something like that. But it's 96 degrees, so it's pretty hot. I did write down sticky, so it must have been humid out as well. Probably doing a lot of sweating in my new goggles too from HD0. But it flies well. You know, obviously, you know, there are things that I have done in this video, both inside and outside, that I haven't done in other quads. And I think that the tune that they have on there kind of gave me that confidence. And also knowing that I had a race version and a freestyle, I think mentally kind of turned me towards attempting to do different maneuvers, which maybe I've done a sprinkling over the years, you know, different sorts of, you might call them tricks, and then doing them with both so that you had something to compare each one of them with. And I have been punching out over the cabana a lot more. I think as I get a bigger, heavier quad, I don't know if I'll have that same sort of confidence, because I have to be careful. That is a living space over there. I'm not certain I'll be doing those sort of punches over the cabana and then diving down by that Japanese maple with larger quads that don't have prop protection, because outdoor furniture is ridiculously expensive. It just worries me. You know, we have those two wicker chairs. There's they swivel as well as rock, which was kind of something I wanted. I've always liked a nice rocking chair, and they were really expensive. Those two chairs, I think, came in slightly more than the couch itself that's sitting there. Some people have asked about the TV that we have mounted up there. This has been about 3 years, I think 3 full summers, That TV is a standard TV off the shelf. It's not meant for outdoor. I had looked into outdoor TVs, and they are several $1,000s for, say, a 44-inch or whatever they are. And I had read on a couple of forums from some people that do outdoor living spaces as their business that they don't encourage their customers to buy outdoor TVs because you can replace a standard off-the-shelf TV 10 times and it will last twice as long as the outdoor TV. I'm sure there are specific cases where an outdoor TV would be better because it's exposed to the elements, but that's a question that I get a fair bit that I don't think I've ever dove into kind of the longer answer, because I think that TV, and we just bought a cheap one, was probably at the time I purchased it less than $300 versus the equivalent on an outdoor was at least $3,000. So that's why we went that way. I've spent almost the entire time talking about other things than the freestyle here, but I think the flight itself, in most cases, along with the flight audio, would tell you what you want to know for the most part. That flight, again, I ran it down a little bit long. I had that habit with the freestyle. I would have to say, again, probably shave 10 seconds off of that total flight time to get you back to 3.5 volts, but it came in at 254. One of the things I haven't talked about up to this point is they're going to be sourcing all these parts from FPV shops here in the U.S. So they'll be, stimulating that market as well. So if you buy something from GameHat Aerial, you're not necessarily taking away from some other U.S.-based company. You're actually stimulating those companies. Again, some of these components could change over time as they find things that they would rather use. Again, these are people who actually fly. They're not just business owners. I suspect this is a side endeavor, a side hustle, but a side hustle which they're focusing a lot of their time and attention on to make sure they can meet the needs of the community. I think that just from my conversations that I've had, they're just getting started, so they're sensitive to a lot of things of being ready to go. And I think they've done a really nice job with these quads. I think my main and only possibly complaint, I prefer the race, inside and outside. I don't know if I needed to say that, but I'm going to go ahead and say that for anybody who might be wondering which one I'd rather have. I just like how it flies. I like the agility that it has with a little lower weight. The freestyle is going to be very likely more durable. It's going to be a slightly bit more smooth if you have the right skill set. I've tried to show them as best as I could within the 4 flights that I was able to show you in a reasonable amount of time. I suspect this video is going to be longer than necessary, but they've done some interesting things, not just in part choices, but in, like, if you look something, they just took the back half off of this to make this a little bit lighter. The ORT antennas are some of the, well, in my opinion, is some of the best antennas. Now, I don't know this to be a fact, but I think this frame comes with these struts on all the sides, and they decrease the weight a little bit by clipping that out as well. They've got some 3D printed parts that they've used to mount the flight controller underneath our typical position, which I'm sure they have a good purpose for that. And while we're looking at the bottom, we can see that we have non-metal screws, which also helps to decrease the weight. The motors are soldered on. So that's something that, when you go to low weight whoops, that's one of the things that you can do to decrease potentially a third or a half a gram, is just to get rid of the plastic connectors and then just solder them directly on. Over here on the freestyle side, we do have motor connectors. So if you bash up a motor, you'll be able to easily replace them. And then we have that same under mounting on this particular quad as well. The battery trays, which I typically break the battery trays quite a bit. The battery trays in both instances held up. Oh, here's another thing we can draw out. They cut out the center of this to get the weight down just a tiny bit as well. If you wanted optimal range, now, I'm not suggesting this is actually going to make a difference, especially with ExpressLRS. You could take the antenna and maybe route it up between the duct and the flight controller to have it up here. That might get you a touch more range, but ExpressLRS is so good. Even with low power, you can get great range. I didn't have any issues, obviously, flying close in like I do with either one of these antennas. In this particular case, I already highlighted the screws on the race version. On the freestyle, on the outer position of the motors, they used metal screws. On the inner position, they used the non-metal screws. I'm not certain which kind of material those non-metal screws are. Some of you might have some established visuals to where you could go ahead and identify those. Again, these parts could change over time. I've got a coupon code down in the video description, NICKBURNS, all capitalized, for 20% off. You don't have to worry about affiliate stuff. Not 20%, $20 off. You don't have to worry about affiliate stuff. There's no affiliate stuff going on here. I'll have a link down in the video description as I normally do to the products I review. So the last thing I have to mention, and I've already talked about it, but I just wanted to show you a little bit, and I'll put it up in the corner over here, is with the Freestyle edition and doing dives. Some of you might be familiar with the yaw washout, which happens pretty commonly with these. Sometimes it can be tuned out. Sometimes it's a power to weight issue. What we found in this particular case, and going around, like, I actually was trying to draw it out. It's one of the things I do when I'm testing is try, in my opinion, it's kind of a bad form dive. Now, this isn't from, Empire State Building high, thousands of feet. I went up pretty high. I double the height of the house at least, if not triple. It's always hard to tell how high you go. But I would lean it over, trying to go straight down. I can get that in frame. Go straight down and not make any corrections. I just wanted to get it going straight down, and then not make any sort of corrections at any way. Just let it fall and let air mode hold it in position. And then when you got to the bottom and you started to throttle up and started to pitch up, that sometimes there's a point where you get in your recovery and it'll pitch up suddenly and then it'll yaw one way or another. We found that the solution in the freestyle version, because the race version I didn't have that, was to switch the motor direction and props from props out to props in, which is one of the classic fixes. We did some other things to work with them, and that was something that, to me, it had a positive impact on how I looked at this endeavor, because they were wanting to investigate it and they were wanting to make changes and they were wanting to try to figure out what was causing it, because admittedly, they're indoor flyers for the most part. So they work on their tunes inside, which makes a lot of sense because you could fly inside all the time. So doing a lot of the outdoor stuff was a little bit outside of their normal sort of flight. So that was something that I think was eye-opening for them. And I enjoyed the fact that they were receptive to me providing them that and working with me to try to correct that. And again, the fix is to just reverse the prop direction and the motors to props in rather than how it came stock, which was props out. You may find yours come props in or props out. Again, there's going to be an evolution to this. They're not just stuck with a particular sort of recipe on their quads and it will stay the same. Some of it will deal with availability of components. They'll be sourcing the components they prefer to use from their particular sources, which would be like Tiny Whoop and We Bleed FPV, our traditional micro companies here in the US. So if you are interested in a new endeavor, sort of custom whoop, again, I like the race version, as you might expect. There'll be a link down in the video description. Don't forget about that coupon code, NICKBURNS, all caps, gets you $20 off. That's only good through the 1st of August. So don't, if you have the money, great, and you want one, great. But don't try to save money and then depend upon that $20 savings after August 1. So that's something that where you kind of have to rush out. They do have some materials that I can't show all of them because the QR codes are specific. Some of them are specific to my shipping information, but I already kind of showed you they've already invested into those sorts of materials as well. And being a business owner from many years ago, I can tell you that even these things costs add up. If you have any comments, questions, suggestions, or otherwise, please let me know in the comments section below. I know it was a long video. I appreciate if you stayed all the way to the end, and I appreciate your time. Thanks for watching.